Okay, so as I was saying, so the nation of the ISO 27001. So in the beginning, it started as a British standard 7799. Okay, so that was the at the beginning of ISO 27001. Okay, and then in 1990s, so ISO started that standard. Okay, and start then to be evolved and improved. Until the latest version, we see it now in 2022. Um, so the scope of the ISMS or the ISO 27001, so this is the information security across the entire organization, whatever the format or the type of the information. So whether it's digital information, whether it's a physical or printed information, whatever the type is of the information. So this will be in the scope of the IS 27001. Okay, and this is a big difference, by the way, by the information security, as you know, and the cybersecurity. So the focus is not only on the digital aspect, but also on the information, whatever type of that information or the format of this information. Okay. Also, let's have a look at the requirements of the IS 27001. So IS 27001, so it has 7 requirements and a list of controls. Okay, so when we look at the requirements, so it has it adopts the continuous improvement cycle. Okay, so it has 7 requirements from the when we look at the standard. So we find the first requirement that is clause number 4. Okay, so clauses 1, 2, 3. So this is the scope of the standard itself and the introduction and so on. So the first requirement is starting from clause number 4. Okay, so the clauses, the mandatory clauses or the required clauses to be implemented or adopted by the organizations are from 4 to 10. Okay, so there are 7 requirements. And they, as I was saying, so it follows the continuous improvement plan, do, check, act. Okay, so when we look at this, so it starts with the planning and then act. So this is, conducting the plan and then check. This is the performance evaluation and the internal audit, and then act based on that. Okay, to continuously improve. Okay, so the first 3 requirements. So it starts with the contextual analysis, or the context of the organization. So this is a contextual analysis, the scope of the ISO in the organization. So defining the scope in the organization, and then doing the contextual analysis, understanding the internal external environment of the organization, and getting the commitment of the management, and doing the commitment on the commitment on the required resources, commitment on the on the improving the liability and so on, and then the planning. Okay, so the planning is we have a plan for improving the information security management system in the organization, and this is based on the risk assessment, okay, or risk management. um, so at this stage or at this point, requirement number 6 for the planning, also we look at the list of controls in Annex A in the standard. So this list of controls. So this is when we do the risk assessment, we have some risks in the defined, and the ISO provides the most common controls that are applicable to most of the organizations, and they have this list of controls in Annex A. Okay, so at this stage as well, so after we do the risk management and the planning, then we have the mitigation plan. Then we look at the Annex A and the list of controls. Okay, and we compare that what we have in the mitigation and the list of controls provided by the ISO, and then we start adopting the controls that are applicable to the organization. Okay, and the support from the management on the plan, on the improvement of the information security management system in the organization by providing the awareness to everyone in the organization, competencies for the team that are implementing, and also the documentation that are required for the standardization of the implementation. Okay, so this is, if we can look at this, so this is, we can look at it as the plan aspect. Okay, or the plan. Okay, part. Okay, so this is a plan, and then do. Then we start the action. Okay, we start conducting the actions. Okay, so at the operation, we conduct the actions. Okay, conduct conduct the mitigation plan and the requirements. Okay, in the organization. And then we check. Okay, so this is performance evaluation. Performance evaluation, we have we review all the achievements against the KPIs and the measures of the set by the organization to achieve the objectives of the ISMS. Okay, and the internal audit to check that we have no non-conformities and we are in conformity with the standard, and then the continuous improvement. Okay, we act upon the what have been discovered and also the in-line as well. We have also the management review. Okay, so we present the status of the ISMS to the management. Okay, and based on the feedback, based on the internal audit feedback, based on the performance evaluation, then we act. We have the continuous improvement. So this is so as you can see, it's a list of requirements provided by the ISO. Okay. Um, so when we look at the benefits of the ISO, why organizations adopt ISO 27001? It's a global standard, as you know, and when organizations adopt and get certified against the 27001, so it gave them a competitive edge. It gave them a global recognition, and this will be in the end will be reflected on the business of the organization and also trust from the third parties. So this is, as you can see, so this is the ISO 27001. So it's a global. It focuses on the information security across the entire organization. On the other hand, when we look at the SOC 2, so SOC, it's on the other hand, it's an audit. If we can look at this, it's an audit from it's an audit report, if we can say so, provided by or based on the principles provided by the AICPA. Okay, so when we look at the SOC 2 origination, so we also see that it started a long time ago, but not that long like ISO. So this started around 15 years ago. Okay, so when we look at the SOC 2 history, so we see that it started around 15 years ago. Okay, so the beginning of the SOC 2, it was from AICPA, as I was saying, the American Institute of, and the beginning was SOC 1. SOC 1, by the way, the SOC 1, the focus of SOC 1 is on the financial aspect of the organizations. Okay, so to give credibility of the financial, aspect of financial credibility in the organization, the SOC 1 is provided. SOC 1 is focused on the financial aspect and is provided according to AICPA. Okay, SOC 2. So it's SOC 2. So this is the if we can say, of this based on the importance of the information security in the organization. So they start to have a SOC 2 focusing on the information security. Okay, so based also on the trusted principles provided by the ISP. Okay, so so SOC 1 is focusing on the financial aspect. SOC 2 is focusing on the trusted principle criteria of the information security aspect. Okay, so if we look at the trusted service criteria provided by the ISPE, so we have 5 trusted criteria. Okay, we have availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. So these are the 5 trusted the 5 trusted service criteria. Okay. By the way, so sorry if I forgot to mention this. So when we look at the ISO 27001, as we said, it's information security management system focusing on the information security and based on the the CIA triad, the confidentiality, integrity, and availability. Okay, so this is the the CIA triad, for the information security: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. When we look at the SOC 2, So it is based on the trusted service criteria, security, availability, processing integrity, confidentiality, and privacy. Okay. The difference here, or the main difference between the ISO 27711 and SOC 2. So in the SOC 2, so it is we have five trust service criteria and choose between them. It means that organization, it's not mandatory for the organization when implementing SOC 2 to have all the five trust service criteria in scope, so they can focus only on security, they can focus only on the availability, they can focus only on the present integrity. This is based on the organization, but it is the one is mandatory is the security, and then we have four optional. So organization, for example, can focus on the security as a mandatory trust service criteria, and then can focus on the availability or the processing integrity or the confidentiality or the privacy. Okay, so it's not mandatory to have all the free trust service criteria, have or the security as a mandatory TSC, and the other four are optional. But this will be, as you know, this will be written on the report or mentioned in the report. Okay. So again, we said that we have SOC 1 based on the financial aspect of the organization, SOC 2 focusing on the information security. We have for the SOC 2, we have two types. We have type 1 and type 2. Okay. Type 1, it means that this is, when the audit takes place, it is like a snapshot. Okay. So the audit will go to the organization right now and will take like a snapshot of the situation right now. Okay, so it means that when looking at or when auditing the controls, so that the audit will be, in this instance. So right now, if the control is implemented or not right now. We have type 2. Type 2 isn't only focusing on what is happening now, but it looks backwards. Okay, so for example, we are now in July. Okay, so if the audit is done now, so the cycle might be from June to June last year to June this year. Okay, so it's an entire year. It means that the audit can look at any control that was implemented last month or 2 months ago or 3 months ago. So it is, as long as the scope is a 12 auditor can audit any evidence along the entire year. Okay, the most common one is 12 months, but also it can be 6 months. So it's 6 to 12 months. Okay, so based on the requirements. Also, another important aspect that when we implement the ISO 27711, so we look at the organization or the org wide. Okay, so we look at the entire organization. The focus of the SOC 2, it is we look at the information security of the clients of the organization. Okay, so this is the aspect of the SOC 2. Okay, so it is not like ISO 27711. It's the most important thing is the information across the organization, but this is the SOC 2 is provided for the clients of the of their vendor or service provider. Okay, so that's why it is service organization controls. Okay. Okay, so let's look here at at a brief of the comparison of 27711 and SOC 2. So when we look at the scope, as I was saying, so this is the ISO 27711. So this is org wide. Okay, so we look at the controls across the organizations. Okay, so this is for the entire organization, the information security management system for the entire organization. Okay, but the SOC 2, as I was saying, so this is a service organization control. So this is focusing on the customer data handling. Okay, so the that the SOC 2, it is provided for the service providers. Okay, so a service provider that is handling information of their clients or of their customers. So the customers would like to trust that the information is in good hands. Okay, so that's why we had the SOC 2. Okay, so the SOC 2, it gives trust to the clients of that customer. Okay, or the clients or the customers of that service provider, if we can say so. Okay. So again, the focus of the ISO 27711, it is on the information assets across the organization, okay, all within the defined scope. So because the scope, the difference of scoping between the, by the way, between the ISO 27001 and SOC 2, the scope of the SOC of the ISO 27001, it can be focusing on, for example, a geographical area. It can be focusing on a specific, for example, department. It can focus on some processes. So this is, the scoping. But when we choose the scope, for example, we choose a geographic location, for example, we apply all the requirements on that geographic location. Okay. So, but when we scope the SOC 2, so we scope, for example, we can scope the geographical area and then, or the geographical location, and then we always choose the trust service criteria that will be applied on that geographical location, for example. So, for example, let's say that we have an organization that is operating in the UK, for example, okay, and also in France, for example. But the focus of the SOC 2 is only on the UK. That's fine. Okay. And inside that geographical location, we can also choose the scope of the TSC, or the trust service criteria. For example, we can say that the scope of that is only the security, because this is a mandatory as we agreed, and the privacy. That's it. And we will not take the availability, processing integrity, and confidentiality in scope. That's fine. Okay, so we scope for the geographical, for example, location, and as well as the TSC. Okay, so we can apply the security and privacy on that specific location. Okay, unlike ISO 27001. ISO 27001, if we, for example, if we've chosen the UK, okay, then we will apply all the requirements as we saw. We will apply all the requirements on that geographical location. Okay, so we cannot choose from the requirements. The requirements are mandatory for all the, for that scope we defined. Okay. Again, the focus one, it is on the org wide. So our focus is we are focusing on the entire organization, the information assets in the entire organization. Our SOC 2 focus is only, as we agree, we focus on the geographical location. We focus on the TSC, and we focus on the services we provide to the clients, because this is what's behind the SOC 2. SOC 2 is we provide trust to our clients. Okay, so behind that is the information handling of our customers, of the customers, of the customers that are being handled by that service provider. Okay. What also is very important when we look at that comparison between 27001 and SOC 2, so the assessment, the assessment of the ISO 27001, so this is assessed by what we call certification body. Okay, so certification body, so this is an organization that is accredited by an accreditation body. Okay, so accreditation body, they accredit the certification body, and the certification body, they have, they are accredited, or they are allowed to provide that assessment. And in the end, what they provide a certification. That is very important. Okay, but the audit, that external audit report is not visible that organization. Okay, unlike SOC 2. SOC 2, it is assessed by a CPA firm. Okay, and the outcome is a report, a detailed report. Okay, so it means that that report is the outcome of the SOC 2. It is a report, detailed report for the fire trust service criteria if they are in scope, and the all the details of the control findings, and so on will be in that report. The ISO 27001, it is just a certification. Okay, so what provides this again? It is a certification body. They issue a certification, but here they issue an audit report. That's why this is called a certification. This is called attestation. Okay, the outcome, the certificate, as we said, so this will be valid for 3 years, but with annual surveillance audits. It means that once the organization passed that audit, the ISO 27001, once it passed that, they are granted with a certification. That certification or that certificate will be valid for 3 years. Okay, regardless of the surveillance audit, whether or not it passes, so still the certificate will be valid. Okay, but what happens if the annual surveillance, if it didn't pass? What happens in the recertification will be a challenge to be recertified, and it's going to be a complete audit from the scratch. Okay, so once you have the certification, so it will be valid for 3 years. We have annual surveillance where with ensure that the system is running, and this will help. That annual surveillance will help on the recertification after 3 years. Okay, but SOC 2, as we saw, it is it has a period of 6 to 12 months, so it will be valid for that period. Okay, so that is valid for the for that 12 months, and then after 12 months, we it will be it will be for 12 months and so on. Okay. Um, okay, when we look at the implementation approach, again, the framework of the ISO 27001, it is prescriptive framework. Prescriptive, it means that you have lots of controls, you have to adopt the entire list of controls. But on the SOC 2, again, we have flexible framework. Again, we can choose between the 5 trust service criteria as long as we have the mandatory of the security. Okay, so we have security as mandatory, and then we choose between the 4. Okay, documentation, again, so documentation, this is a complete information security management system, comprehensive frameworks. We have a comprehensive documentation, we have formal documentation, but on the SOC 2 we have also formal documentation, but the focus, the control effectiveness, this is the focus. Okay, and this sometimes require also documentation, but the importance of the SOC 2 is on the control effectiveness. Geographical acceptance. So this is when we look at the how the ISO 27001 and SOC 2 geographically across the world, we see that it is so since it's the ICPA is US, is on the SaaS, by the way, it's standard from the USA. So we see that it is highly adopted, the SOC 2 is highly adopted and highly, recognized in the North America. Okay, so that's of course because this is, it is based on a ICPA, so it is highly adopted in the US. Okay, nevertheless, it is also, it is also adopted in other, it is also adopted in other parts. We find that ISO 27001, it is not that adopted like the SOC 2 in the North America. Okay, but it is, as you can see, it is also, it has high adoption, but it's not like SOC 2. Okay, when we look at Europe, so if we find the vice versa. Okay, so this is the it was the study of the British standard, and this is, it is logical to be highly adopted in Europe more than the SOC 2. Okay, Asia and Pacific, we also find the ISO 27001, it's highly adopted. In Latin America, also we have the ISO. In Middle East and Africa, we also have the ISO 27001 highly adopted. So as you can see, it is the ISO 27001, it is highly adopted, in most of the world except for the North America. Okay. We also look at a different perspective. So other organizations and other based on the contractual agreements, we find that some organizations are required to adopt and required to comply to SOC 2. Why? Because this is the focus is on the pays on the SB. So in some organizations pays on contractual agreement and pays on some industry and so on, they are also required to adopt the SOC 2. Okay. Again, the flexibility and customization, we saw that again. So we say that once more. So it is, we said that the ISO 27001 is more prescriptive. It means that they have specific requirements, less of requirements and less of controls. Okay, so the less of requirements are mandatory, and the less of controls, they are they are based on the applicability. They should be adopted. Okay. But the SOC 2, it is flexible and customizable. Why? Because we can choose, as we said, we can say that, okay, we don't, for this, for example, this customer or for the for that engagement, our focus is not on the availability. Okay, availability is not important, but we need to focus on the security and privacy. So that's fine. Okay, so the SOC 2 can be based on that. Okay, so we can focus only on the on the security and privacy. But SOC 2 in ISO 27001, you cannot do that. Okay, so that's requirements you have to apply. Okay. have here, list of controls, as I was saying. So in Annex A, we have 93 controls, okay, under 4 main categories. This list of controls, so if the control is applicable to the organization, so it it must, if I can say, it must be, it must be implemented, or it must be planned to be implemented, okay? Very important here for the control, because this is very controversial, the list of controls, whether or not it's mandatory. So we agree that the list of requirements mandatory. The list of controls, it, if they are applicable, so you can have, some of the controls might not be applicable. For example, the organization, for example, does not have in-house development. So in this case, the security development lifecycle is not, or security development is not one of the controls that is applicable. Okay, if the organization is not, for example, if the organization doesn't have any private information, so the privacy part will not be applicable, for example. Okay, but if the control is applicable, then it must be it must be implemented, or must be planned to be implemented. It does not, it does not stop the certification, but it must be implemented, not mandatory before the certification, but it must be planned, implemented, or planned to be implemented. Okay, and again, SOC 2, as we said, it is, tailored controls based on the, based on the service and the client commitment. Okay, so that can be tailored based on the case. Okay, so ISO 27711, it is less of requirements, but it can be customized based on that, and the report will reflect all of that. So if it is only the, for example, this will be reflected on the report. Okay. Okay, let's look now at the audit process. So our process, as we said, the auditor in the case of 27711, so this is accredited, and the SOC 2 is a CPA firm. Okay, the duration of the ISO 27711 can take 3 to 6 months. Okay, this is based on the type. We said that we have type 1, so this is a snapshot, or or SOC, or type 2, SOC 2 type 2. So this is 6 to 12 months. So based on the controls provide and the during that. Okay, the validity again is 3 years with an annual surveillance, and this is 12. So this is 12 months if the scope is is 12 months. Okay, and if we look at the cost of implementation, maintenance, and so on, so we can see that in the beginning, ISO 27711, of course, the cost of the is higher than the SOC 2 audit process. SOC 2, it is, it is, as you can see, the audit process expensive than the the ISO. Why? Because we said that this is focusing on the effectiveness of the controls. Okay, so this is in depth of assessing the effectiveness of the controls inside the organization. So it can be more expensive as an audit process than the ISO. The maintenance is also SOC 2 is more, but overall it is more or less they are very close to each other. The total, I mean. Okay. Again, documentation. So again, documentation. So ISO 27711, the documentation, we agreed that on highly, is a comprehensive ISMS. So this is, of course, the documentation will be extensive, will be comprehensive, and will be, of course, more formal and more comprehensive than the SOC 2. SOC 2 is focusing again on the on the control, implementation, and effectiveness. So this is the more focus on this. So this is very important. We have also, beside the requirement, the process, and so on, we have what's called the SOA, Statement of Applicability, where we have the list of controls, the 93 controls, okay, with their applicability, or whether or not they are applicable or not, whether or not they are implemented or not, and if they are applicable, why, justification for inclusion, and justification for exclusion. Okay, and SOC 2 is more or less, again, description of the system and the control environment. So this is a focus on the, on this. Of course, the complexity and the size of the organization will have an impact on the implementation and the cost. Of course, the scope of assessment, so will have also an impact on the cost of, again, and the efforts. Okay, the maturity level of the controls, and the the industry, all of that can have an impact on the cost and the implementation, factors. Any similarities between them? Of course, yes. So both frameworks, they are based on, so if we can look at this, so both of them are focusing on the, on the information security and the trust provided to the security posture of the organization. The ISO 27711, as we said, it is confidentiality, integrity, availability. The SOC 2, it is the fire trust principles, the security, availability, privacy, integrity, or processing integrity, and security. So they are, very close to each other, focusing on almost the same, almost very, common objectives. Okay. Um, so they're both focusing on the security posture of the organization, focusing on the, improving the information security, also on the sensitivity of the information, for them focusing on the protection of that. Okay. Also of the, of the regular assessment. So this, as we said, this is it's valid for 3 years, but with annual surveillance, and SOC 2 is annual, audit. So they have a lot of similarity. Both of them, they are adopting the risk management approach and mitigation. Okay. But of course, it is the ISO 27711. It is more comprehensive in the risk management and in the mitigation. Okay. Both of them, they also had the continuous improvement cycle, as we said, the Plan, Do, Check, Act. Also, the documentation of the control and the processes, they have that similarity, and the third party, validation and assurance. But as we said, ISO 27711, it is certification body, and the SOC 2, it is a CPA. Okay. Can they complement each other? Of course, they can complement each other. Okay, so the many organizations, they implement or they adopt both, and they have, when they implement both together. So is this integration, of course, will improve will have, a more efficient approach to together. Okay. So in conclusion, so if we can have important takeaways from all of this, so we can say that ISO 27711, so this is, as we said, ISMS, is prescriptive. It focuses on the information security, across the, while SOC 2, it is focusing on the, as a service organization, providing services to customers, and the focus on the customers that they're handling. Okay. Geographical considerations is, of course, is highly adopted worldwide than SOC 2, but sometimes SOC 2, it is required by, contractual obligations and so on, can complement each other, of course. Okay, so how to choose? So this is based on the organization. So organization that's providing services to customers. So the SOC 2 will give them more trust. Okay, organization that pays on the, pays on a multinational organization that would like to be globally recognized, and that is a focus. So ISO 27711, of course, that can be, can meet that, can meet that. Okay, and beyond that compliance, beyond, getting just certified or getting the audit report, so beyond that, it is, it's an opportunity for the organization to improve its security posture, and this is, and build trust with the customers, and this is, beyond that compliance, it is, important to have opportunity for improving the security posture in the organization, and trust to third parties. And as also we said in conclusion, so both adopt the continuous improvement, the Plan, Do, Check, Act. So this is also an opportunity for continuous improvement of the information security in the organization. Okay, so that was a brief about the comparison between ISO 27711 and SOC 2. It was my pleasure to be with you in this webinar. And please let me know if you have any questions, or if you have any comments, or any, if you'd like to add anything to this. But we have a question for SOC 2. Yes, it is. We can say that it's for every year. If this is every year, yes, if the organization is adopting the SOC 2 type 2, so yes, the scope will cover, for example, 12 months, and this will be valid for that 12 months. Okay, and then on the following year, if the organization would like to issue another report, so then it's going to be, so we can say yes after five, so we can say that after 1 year, yes, it will not be valid. So if the organization would like to issue another report to be valid for another year, yes, it should be it should be we should have another we have another question. No, the ISO is for 3 years. ISO 27001, it is valid for 3 years with animal surveillance, but it doesn't mean that if the organization doesn't meet the animal surveillance, in that the certification will be expired. No. So if even so the certification will be valid for 3 years, whether or not the surveillance passed or not. But the surveillance will help organization to recertify after 3 years. Okay, so if the two surveillance pass, then the recertification will be easier. If it doesn't pass, then it's going to be a complete audit from the scratch. That's a very good question. So how often do companies change the scope? So this is a very important question. So that is very tricky. So the scope, as we agreed, so we are scoping on two things. We are scoping on are we going to are we going to implement the SOC 2 on the entire organization or a specific geographical location? And then we scope also the five trust service criteria. Okay. So if the organization choose, for example, security and privacy, the report will only be focusing on the security and privacy. Many organizations they say that okay, in the first year we will focus only on the privacy and security and privacy, and then we will start adopting, for example, the integrity and availability from the second year. So this it happens, and we see this a lot. Okay, so organization can start with a narrow scope, with the mandatory scope of security, and for example with the privacy, and then they can adopt more service criteria, because that will be reflected in the end in the report. For that question, if I understand the question correctly, if I understand the question correctly, so it's very important. That is a very good point. So in the surveillance, so you say that, for example, you have some controls, and you said that this control, we will not implement that control this year. Okay, and we will do it next year, for example. Okay, and the surveillance of ISO 27001, they will focus on two things. They will focus on the corrective actions from the previous audit. They also will look at the controls that you said that you will implement next year. If this is not implemented, then that the surveillance audit will not. I'm not saying that it will not pass, but it's gonna be a point in that surveillance, and the following surveillance will look at this. If the second surveillance doesn't have the trust, and they think that the information security management system it is not running effectively, that can have a major impact on their recertification. Yes, and that can make the organization recertify from the very beginning. I hope that's clarified the question, Divya. Any more questions? Another question: what are the status of the ISO 27000 certification? Until the certification, it is valid for 3 years, as long as even if I'm not saying the impact. If whatever the case of the surveillance, your certification is valid for 3 years. Okay, the surveillance is for the recertification, but your certification is valid for 3 years. Okay. Yes, the audit, of course, if any non-conformities in the surveillance. So any non-conformity in the surveillance. So that's not the problem. The problem is if the surveillance result is the information security management system in the organization is not run, is not, if I can say, it is not stable. For example, there is no risk assessment, there is no management review, there is no internal audit. Then the system is not, the system is not working effectively. Then they will have a major non-conformity on the major non-conformity on the surveillance, and this will have an impact, of course, on the recertification that can lead to an entire audit from the scratch. Any more questions? Thank you so much, everyone. It was a pleasure being with you in this webinar. I'm sorry, there is another question. Sorry for that. That is another a good question about who can recommend companies, which perform SOC 2 and also in Europe. Okay. This is an important question. So SOC 2, it is organization that provides SOC 2. It must be a CPA firm. Not any organization can provide, the SOC 2. It must be, it must be, it must be a CPA firm that can provide such a report. Okay. Lots of, you can find lots of organizations that have any organization that have, a CPA firm, they can do that. Okay, so this is an important, and of course, iExperts, they provide the service. And of course, in connection with other, CPA firms. Okay, so again, thank you, everyone. And it was a great pleasure being with you on this webinar. And have a very good day. Thank you.